Hello everybody, Gisele Grenier here. In today's video, I'm going to be creating a colorful seascape on a piece of escarpment stone. So last year I did another one, a light, tiny little one, and I keep talking about this little stone that I focus so much on the varnishing that, and it's lasted a year, which doesn't sound like much, but if you knew the winter that we had, we're in Canada, Ontario, southwestern Ontario, and the stone was left in my garden. It went through heavy rain. It went through a ice storm. It went through winter, a heat spell, refreezing, all the stuff, and the stone is in perfect condition. I'm going to show it to you at the very end of the lesson. So on the table, I've got a piece of escarpment stone here. You can see one part is kind of flat and the other one's kind of shiny. So with the stone, I live on the mountain, so we have an abundance of escarpment stone, and you can look up what it is on Google. So you scrub it really, really hard, wash it with escarpment stone. You really have to wash it well, rinse it, and then let it air dry. And then what I did is on the one side, I applied a layer of Decor Media Matte Medium just to help make it a little bit more smooth, just to kind of fill in any holes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a layer of gesso to prime it. And then we're going to paint it. Now for the paints this time, I'm going to be using the Decor Americana Premium Acrylic Paint. It's not the Traditions is the professional paint that I'm using, but this one here is a nice thick and it has more of a shiny look to it, which is nice for the stones, especially if they're going to be displayed outside. I just kind of like doing landscapes with these because they're thicker. So what do I got here? You know what? I just realized that they have a matte medium as well. I could have used that instead of the Decor Media. Oh well, they're all interchangeable. Doesn't matter. So I've got the white gesso. Then I've got titanium white, and I'm in no particular order here. I'm missing a yellow. I've got phthalo blue, cadmium red hue, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and I've also got heavy gel medium. And you're gonna see what I'm going to do with that. Now at the end for varnishing, I'm going to be using the DuraClear High Gloss Varnish. It's polyurethane, good for indoor and outdoor use. Put you guys over there. Over there. So like I'm talking, this is like super thick, but I could also use the Decor Media Gesso. That's fine as well. And I'm just going to be putting, now when you're doing your gessoing on a stone like this, don't use brand new brushes. Use something that's rough because this is hard on the brushes. So I have a set of brushes put aside for, like, they're marked for varnishing, which are only used for varnishing, which is this one here. And then I've got some in a container that I use that are good brushes, but like for this one here, this was just an extra brush that I had, which I used for gessoing stones, and then it breaks down, then it goes into another container. And when I do little painting activities with the kids in the neighborhood, they get to use those brushes. All right, so that's that. So with this here, I can let that dry and then flip it, paint the back side, then flip it, then paint the sides and all that stuff. So it's always best if, like, when you do one stone, you know, you're probably going to be seeing first if it's something you like doing. But if you like painting stones, do them in batches, especially the prep, because this part here is the suckiest part. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and do this. I'm not going to bore you. I'm going to go ahead and finish this, let it dry, and then when we come back, we'll lay out the composition. Well, it's a few hours later. We had a power failure. All right, so on the table, I've got my stone all primed. It's nice and dry. And I've got my paints out. So I've got the phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, cad red hue, burnt sienna, and titanium white. If you're using Traditions or if you're using the fluid acrylics, substitute the cad red hue for a naphtha red light, and that'll give you an even more vibrant color. And we can take a charcoal pencil, and we could do our initial sketch to get it started, or you can paint it freestyle. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch it in case you've never done this before. So what I want to look at is, I don't want to put the horizon line smack dab in the middle. So I'm looking at, do I want more water or do I want more sky? Let's give it more sky. So I'm thinking the horizon line is going to be right about here. Now horizon lines need to be straight. You're painting on a rock, you're not going to have straight. So we've got that, and then we'll put a few clouds in here, and then we'll put a bit of sand right there. Now what you could do is when you paint, you can take the paint all the way around to the side. What I do is I'll do that, the side painting off camera, because it's tedious. Just the front stuff, but you're just taking the same mixture and you're just taking it right to the side. The back can stay white. So, well, let's start first with just a little flat brush. You could do this whole thing with one brush, to be honest with you, one large round brush. Would that be a good challenge? You know what? Let's do that. I'll do the entire painting with one brush. One round brush. This is a number 6 round brush. Okay, I'm going to take some white. White. And let's give this a light mist. So we'll have almost like a little wet on wet. And with the white paint, I'm going to cover the whole piece. I like to say when you're painting landscapes, the bigger the brush, the better, so you don't get caught in details. Even this, for me, the brush is a bit small. But let's see what happens. So with the dirty brush, pick up some blue, and we'll start at the top. And you'll just horizontal, and as you work down, you'll start running out of paint. Just keep going as far as you can. Then pick up a bit more blue, start at the top, come back down, and work down. So you can see, yeah, this is definitely, the brush is too small. So what we want to do is we want to work this where it's dark at the top, light at the bottom. Get a bit more white. Let's get that in there. But with the roughness of the rock, that's posing a challenge. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill it in with paint. Then I'll come in with another layer. Now this is going to dry darker. Is that a bit light for a sky? A little bit. So I'm going to go into the ultramarine blue and a speck of phthalo blue right at the top. And this, now I'll bring that down and fade it like that. And there's little pores in the stone, so don't paint the clouds yet until this is completely dry. And you can take whatever left over, and I'll just show you the technique. This is too small. Sorry, this is too small. So you want to use a big brush, and you're just going to paint the sides like that. Okay, so just to show you the initial technique, and then I'll do the rest off camera. All right, just like that. And as it's drying, I can already see where some of the paint is sinking into the pores. So let's just go with a bit more white. And now let's work the other way. Let's work this way. And work it upwards. And as you work upwards, you're going to run out of paint, and the sky's going to stay dark. Now go into same mixture, add a bit more blue, and go the other way. Now when you're working on a canvas, you don't need to do it this many times. This is only because we're painting on a rock. That the paint is, there's little pockets in the stone. I want this nice and dark up here. You need dark to show light, so if you paint your sky too light, the clouds aren't going to show up. There we go. All right, with the same mixture in the brush, pick up more phthalo blue now. Get that in there. Then pick up some white into a separate pile. Then another batch of white into a separate pile. Only because we were going to do this a couple of times. And we're going to put that, so no ultramarine blue. And I'm going to take the whole thing right to the bottom to get that initial layer in there. Yeah, bigger brush, bigger brush. thinking probably in number 10 even. And then you can take whatever leftover paint, you can get water, you can paint the bottom, the sides, all that stuff. Ideally, at the same time that you're painting the stone is best if possible, because the paint mixtures are going to be all the same. You don't have to make anything new. But if you have to make something new, it's not the end of the world. Okay, so we have that. Now I'm going to go into, let's take the darker mix. And let's just redefine that horizon line. And depending on, you know, the photograph that you use, sometimes the horizon line is supposed to be lighter than the foreground, because the foreground gets darker as you come closer. I've seen so many pictures, because we were doing research on the Bahamas, where the horizon line is almost black. It is almost black. But I want this dark because I can add the waves in. And like I said, you need light to show dark, dark to show light. If the water's too light, you're not going to see any waves. That's pretty good. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the paint that I have here. I'm going to let everything dry. And I'm going to paint these sides of the stone. Alright, so I quickly painted the sides of the stones, and everything is still a little bit wet. So I'm going to take whatever's left over my brush. I just rinsed it out a little bit. And I'm just going to... And then what you want to do is you want to make sure that there aren't any pockets of stones showing where, you know, the paint kind of just sunk in. And I'm going to take some white and just going to put some clouds in here. You can do this as much as you want, little as you want. And it's nice when the paint is still wet when doing this. Just going to dry brush a little bit with some nice clouds at the horizon line. I'm going to turn that paper around, because you can get a nice edge when you work the edge of the brush and just fuzz everything. You don't want a straight line of clouds, so just make sure you soften everything. Use your fingers if you want. I'm going to blot the brush, then I'm just going to take the bottom, and I'm just going to fuzz out the bottom of the clouds so they blend into the background. Painting on stone is very rough on the brush, so just keep that in mind when you're doing it. Nice and soft. Okay, and then for the water, I can take again more of the white, and what we're going to do these X strokes. Oh, I'm going to need to thin that down a little bit more. Thin that down a little bit more. There we go. Just these X strokes, softer in the back, and a little bit more detailed as they come forward. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the heavy gel medium in the water to make it look like there's actually water in there. And the paint can go on a little bit heavier to make it look like waves. And I'll just put some little ones in the front. And now I'm going to take burnt sienna, a little bit of the white, whatever's on there. Take a little bit of the cad red hue, with a little bit more white than that, making a nice sandy color. This is going to dry darker, so don't paint it too dark, because with the blue it's also underneath, it's going to make everything darker. Now when you, for the sides, I'm just going to kind of line that up and then just paint use the excess paint. Paint the sides and the bottom. just going to make that a little bit darker. Take some of that blue in there. When you use blue in the brown, it makes, depending on the ratio, it makes something like Payne's gray. Oops, the lights are flickering. The lights are flickering. Uh-oh. Now I'm just going to make that sand not so even. And just kind of add a little bit more here. Give the sand some dimension. Now the sand, the bottom part's easy because you could just paint that straight with just a burnt sienna. That's no big deal. I want to make the edges a little bit darker. There we go. Alright, so you can see the shine that this paint gives. Not a flat finish, it's a nice shiny finish. So what I want to do now is I'm going to let this completely dry, completely dry. Then the last step is to come in with the heavy gel medium for the water, and then the varnishing after that. Alright, so it's finished drying, but I wanted to add something else to it. I wanted the water to be a little bit more green. So I took the phthalo green blue with some water, and I'm just glazing a little bit. And it's putting a very, very light stain in the water. Just a light stain, just enough. And then where the actual water is, I can come back and just put a little bit more of the titanium white, which will contrast against the green. There we go. That's it. So now we'll come back in another few minutes. So we're going to take the heavy gel medium now, and this is completely optional. This is going to take about a day to dry. And then you can come in and you can just apply a layer of this just to the water part. And when this dries, it'll look like water. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this is if you're doing this and you want everything else to be a matte finish, you just want the water to be shiny, then you have to use more of a matte varnish on the sky and the sand. Because if you use and just realize the high gloss varnish on everything, then everything's going to be shiny. So I have to change up my varnish. Still going to use the Duraclear because it's indoor-outdoor, but I'm just going to change the finish. This would also be a good opportunity to show you the difference in the finish, how it'll affect the paint. Okay, I think I've got everything on there, and you can use a palette knife if you're doing this on a canvas. But apply it thickly. That's the beauty of this stuff. There we go. So I could have gone to even a satin varnish, but I want to just more of just to show you the matte instead. And the varnishing is done over a few days just to make sure you've got complete coverage. So I'm going to use my special brush that I use for varnishing. And I'm just going to apply a layer. So you'll be able to see what that looks like with a matte finish. And the other thing is you can the medium, the heavy gel medium, you don't have to use that if you don't want to. That was just a really neat technique. In the varnish tube, make sure you give it a shake, but let it settle so you don't have any bubbles. And it's better to do multiple light, even coats of varnish instead of just one heavy coat. Especially if the stones are going to be outside, you want to make sure that they are varnished. So I would do this, and I would let this dry. Then I would flip it over, and I would paint the backside or varnish the backside, and then wait a day, flip it over. And I usually leave about a week for all the varnishing steps for these types of paintings. Alrighty, so that's it. So with this here, it's basically done, and you would sign it. As an art abandonment project that I'm doing is I don't sign the artwork. That's the whole thing, is that it's anonymous, and all I would do is just basically put a little note for the inspiration, all that stuff, put it in the bag, tie it off, and then leave it out. And this I'll probably leave by the lake, because this actually could be the lake. So, alrighty, so that's it. So we're going to let this, and then what I'll do is the actual finishing photograph at the end of the video will be what it looks like completely dry. So I really hope that you enjoyed this project. I would love to see your version of this. So what to do is, the link is below, go to the community and post a picture in there so everybody can see what everybody else is doing. And I don't know, maybe if you're in the Hamilton area, you might be able to see, you might find a little bag on a park bench or something, and maybe it'll be one of my pieces. All right, so until I see you in the next video, stay inspired.